Hi everyone, my name is Julie, and today we're traveling to the country that we're seeing a lot in the news recently, Ukraine. The language of this country has become the symbol of identity and a reason to fight for, or against. Here I'm not going to talk about the current events, but I'll try to explain the history and the specificity of the language of these lands. Привіт! And welcome to the Ukrainian language. Before starting, I just want to mention that this video is a fundraiser. Under it you can find the link and donate to my chosen charity. If you can't donate at the moment but would like to do so, then just watch the video and share it with your friends so they can watch it too. And I will be donating all the ad revenue from this video. Ukrainian language is an East Slavic language spoken mostly in Ukraine, where it is also the official language. Ukrainian speakers also live outside Ukraine in Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and in many European and North American countries. There are in total around 40 million Ukrainian native speakers, and currently it's hard to say which country they live in exactly because of the 10 million Ukrainian refugees. In Ukraine, the language is native for the 67.5% of its almost 45 million population, according to the 2001 census. That is obviously slightly outdated, and the numbers could have changed, especially because of the situation. These days, so many people switch to speaking Ukrainian at home instead of another East Slavic language. I guess in that story, one simply cannot avoid politics, and it's not like I'm running away from it. So let's see how Ukrainian came to be, and why today the question of language became so political. Yes, languages are part of identity, but they're also tools that help people from different parts of the globe connect and understand each other. That's why I could never stop learning languages. A great tool for learning a new language quickly, and the sponsor of today's video is Rosetta Stone, a language learning app that teaches you language through immersion. You don't have to memorize translations or study grammar. You learn language naturally as you learn your mother tongue. They have a quite impressive language selection. They are probably the only ones to have Farsi, and as some of you might know, I'm learning Farsi, and it's quite challenging to find good learning resources for it. From the first lesson, you start to listen, read, speak, and write in your target language. 45 به نظر من خیلی ساده و کارآمده. Plus, as there are no translations, it means it doesn't matter what your native language is. You can access all the courses Rosetta Stone has to offer. Of course, I have a very nice and exclusive offer for you. If you click the link in the description, you can get the lifetime subscription with 40% off for $179 instead of $299. That's just the price of a cup of coffee per week for a year, for an invaluable investment in yourself and access to all Rosetta Stone languages forever. There is also a 30-day refund if you need. If you prefer something more short-term, there are also 3 and 12-month subscriptions. So go and take advantage of the offer and connect to the world through language. Ukrainian language history starts long before Ukraine, when there was Indo-European language. Around 6,000 years ago, these Indo-Europeans were hanging around, and according to some theories, they were actually hanging around somewhere in Ukraine, so it's a sort of a cradle of Indo-Europeans, according to some theories. Slowly, the Indo-Europeans started to disperse, and their languages split into different language families, one of them Slavic. These Slavs were still hanging around modern-day Ukraine for a couple of thousand years, until around 500 AD, some of them migrated south and west, forming the South and West Slavic branches. The remaining became East Slavs, and they spoke dialects of the same Eastern Slavic language. In the 9th century, these East Slavs were conquered by the Vikings, who went by the name Rus, and who established Kievan Rus. Soon, the Slavic people living in this country started to identify as Rus themselves, and they spoke the ancient East Slavic language, which they called Ruski. The language, of course, had its dialects, but still could easily be understood by the population all around this Kievan Rus country. In the 10th century, the country converted to Orthodox Christianity, and the language of writing and instruction became the Old Church Slavonic, a language based on South Slavic dialects, to which the Bible got translated. This language, of course, impacted the Old East Slavic language by bringing new vocabulary and, of course, by bringing the Cyrillic writing system. We find birch bark manuscripts from this period, where simple people send notes to their neighbors or things like that, which shows how literate the common people were at this time. Old East Slavic really started to diverge when foreign forces came in. The eastern part of Rus became part of the Mongolian Empire, while the western part joined the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, which elected the West East Slavic dialect, the ancestor of modern Ukrainian and Belarusian, as the official language. This language was still called Ruska Mova by the locals back then. When the Great Duchy of Lithuania united with Poland, the official language of this huge country became Polish. This is when the future Ukrainian and Belarusian got a strong Polish influence and incorporated many Polish words. Some researchers say that today Ukrainian vocabulary corresponds to Russian only in 60% and has more common vocabulary with Polish. That is because of that period within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Progressively, the territory of Ukraine got incorporated into the Russian Empire. After 400 years of separation between the two East Slavic branches, Russian and Ukrainian have already become two separate languages. However, the politics of Russia in that period didn't recognize Ukrainian as a separate language, but merely as a dialect of Russian. Naturally, during the Russian rule, a lot of Russian words entered Ukrainian vocabulary. From the second half of the 19th century, the policy towards Ukrainian became extremely oppressive. Ukrainian identity was not recognized as a thing, and it was forbidden to publish anything in Ukrainian language, except for literary works. This was also the period when the poet Taras Shevchenko lived and worked. He is possibly the most famous Ukrainian poet, and he is considered to have formed the Ukrainian literary language. Then the Soviet Union came, and first it took a completely different stand on Ukrainian language. Soviets started the politics of Ukrainization in Ukraine, Soviet Republic, and encouraged the usage of Ukrainian in all public spheres. However, this approach ended and got completely reversed in 1937. Russian language was once again given priority until the end of the Soviet Union in 1991. This is why today language is such a painful topic. The memory of language oppression is still alive. So that's how the three languages came to be. From one East Slavic root, they slowly diverged and became something else. But what's interesting is that they all used to call themselves Rus, and some of them still do. Belarus, Russia, Rusin, a small language closely related to Ukrainian, spoken in the Carpathians. But where does the name Ukraine come from, and when did the Ukrainians start to call themselves like that? The word Ukraina first appears in the 12th century. In the old manuscripts, it means something like the lands around a city or a land around a certain center. For a long time, this word was used to describe the lands anywhere, not only in Ukraine. We find examples of Polish Ukraina, German Ukraina, Tatar Ukraina, but by the end of the 16th century, the word Ukraina already designated a specific area, the lands around the Dnieper River. Only during the 19th century, the name Ukraine shifted from an area to the name of the people who lived there. That's about the history. Now let's talk about the pronunciation. Historically, and now again touching on history, the Old East Slavic had a rule where each syllable had to end with a vowel. Ukrainian preserved this rule the most. That's why it is sometimes considered to be the most musical Slavic language. Ukrainian has 6 vowel sounds: I, U, I, E, O, A, but 10 vowel letters. These 4 correspond to sounds Ya, Ye, Yu, Yi. Ukrainian uses the Cyrillic alphabet, and most of the letters would be recognizable for anyone familiar with it. The Ukrainian specificity could be the sound H, written with this letter, while this one corresponds to the G sound and is encountered quite rarely, mostly in loanwords. Oh, and this letter stands for the combination of the sounds sh. The grammar of Ukrainian is pretty standard for a Slavic language, meaning it is very complicated. It's an SVO language, but the word order is free, so it can be pretty much anything and still make sense. This is allowed by the fact that everything is declined and conjugated in Ukrainian. There are 3 genders and 7 cases. There are 4 declinations, meaning 4 ways to change cases depending on the ending of a word and the gender. And don't forget that adjectives, pronouns, numerals, pretty much everything declines together with the noun. For example, this phrase, мої 3 найкращих друзів, my 3 best friends, in instrumental case becomes з моїми 3 найкращими друзями, with my 3 best friends. So you see that literally every single word changed here. With verbs, it doesn't become any easier. These are conjugated by person, number, and tense. To finish the story, let's hear some Ukrainian spoken by the native speakers.
Тоді не було соцмереж, тоді не було нічого. Навіть інтернету я застала, що не було. Були газети та журнали. І тоді формування взагалі такого явища, як зірка, тоді не було слова «селебріті», не було слова «популярна людина». Тоді були зірки. І от зірка, вона є уособленням чогось ідеального. Вона повинна правильного, тоді були свої закони.
Насправді, я думаю, що все більш і більш цікаво нам, як нації, усвідомлювати те, що в якій чудовій країні ми живемо. В якій великій, в першу чергу, і великій я кажу неспроста, а я кажу це із-за того, що у нас є величезна ботанічна, географічна різноманітність, яка дозволяє виробникам малих продуктів, чи це хлібопекарі, чи це винороби, чи це гастроентузіасти, ресторатори чи пивовари, використовувати саме те, що дає нам наша земля, що дає тобі той чи інший.
Ukrainian is a big and thriving language, and it has a bright future. I'm sure about that. And I also hope for the bright future for the Ukrainian people and all the people in the world. And I wish that we all live in peace. Subscribe if you love learning about languages, and if you want to pick the next language, then check out my Patreon, where my top tier patrons vote for the next language video. And you can vote too. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in our next exploration.